and we're part of the International Chamber of Commerce in Paris. So we have access to 14,000 chambers globally. JCCI is an independent, non-political, subscription-based association dedicated to promoting an environment conducive to good business. JCCI is recognized as a key player in the promotion and facilitation of international trade. We host 2 to 3 international events per month where we will invite the ambassador or high commissioner to give an overview of the bilateral trade opportunities, and we'll include a logistics company and a financial institution just talking through the trading cycle, and we would invite our members to this event. JCCI is the first port of call for visiting trade missions and foreign delegates, enabling it to open the doors to new business opportunities for many members. JCCI workshops and seminars cover doing business in various countries. And JCCI, our international reputation for good governance and its ability to deliver results have made it the partner of choice for local and international SME development projects. And we form partnerships with the German government, the Belgian government, and also we work with the city of Johannesburg and Gauteng province as well. And JCCI has also formed a very strategic partnership with Trade Forward Southern Africa. And we run 2 projects at present with TFSA, one with the BSOs in the region and also with the Women in Trade. And we look forward to strengthening our collaboration with TFSA. And we would also like to promote the tools, the export tools that every company that's participating today that can use these tools to really be part of your export strategy. And I'd like to welcome our first speaker today. I'd like to welcome Advocate Rob Moody, Lead Access to Information and Trade Promotion from Trade Forward Southern Africa. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks very much, Bernadette. Much appreciated. And first off, let me just let everybody know we want to express our deep appreciation to Bernadette and Busi and her team at the Joburg Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and also especially to Rob Canavo, who's the South African Honorary Consul in the United Kingdom and also associated with JCCI and an ex-ambassador of the South African Business Chamber in the UK. We're really delighted and absolutely indebted to our panelists today for joining us in these efforts, which have slowly and steadily progressed from provision simply of information and knowledge and export training to steps to open doors to actual connection with potential opportunities for sales by producers and vendors from Southern African Customs Union and Mozambique. I'm just talking from some notes that I scribbled here, and I have to be able to read my own notes. But this is our first session in the Meet the Buyer series was with 3 major importers in the UK. Our second session was a specific session just with the Knowledge Center business support organizations in the region. And that was done with Alan Revere from the International Trade Center in Geneva, highlighting the International Trade Center's tender platform that brings together tender opportunities from around the world. And today we're focusing on 3 areas. 1, the United Nations procurement system, the United Kingdom's National Health Service. We're getting a bit of feedback from people coming on, Busi. I don't know if we can mute other people's mics.
Sorry.
We've asked people to mute. Can you mute yourself, please?
Please, otherwise we get terrible feedback on the session. Thanks ever so much, people. So today we're focusing on 3 platforms and opportunities: the United Nations, the United Kingdom's National Health Service, as well as the EU tender opportunities. Just please, everybody in the meeting, always keep in mind the Trade Forward Southern Africa Trade and Information Hub. As Bernadette said, we brought together some really fabulous top-class tools from around the world, including from the ITC, the EU, the British government, and in actual fact, the American government as well. Tools where you can identify markets, statistically identify the best markets for products, whether you're price competitive, whether you're export ready, where you can actually identify business contacts, and vitally also check what the customs duties, taxes, and various compliance rules are that you have to comply with in various markets around the world for your specific products. Just to give you a heads up, next week we're actually going to be starting with a consultant trying to model and develop a plan to deepen, widen, and extend the offerings across the region, and perhaps even wider into Africa, not trying to replicate or duplicate, but to complement, support, and fill gaps in the whole export promotion process and spur collaboration, exactly like this collaboration that we've got going today with Johannesburg Chamber and our panelists. And lastly, for our audience, please just remember that next Thursday is the Trade Forward Southern Africa webinar, which is being done jointly with the International Trade Center's She Trades grouping from Geneva, as well as the Small Enterprise Development Agency in South Africa, which has formed the She Trades South Africa chapter, focused specifically on women. And the third series of this grouping of webinars will happen on the 22nd of September, aiming specifically to bring in some retail buyers in the United Kingdom. Just wanted to give that quick overview. Those of you who know us, I'm glad to have you back in this session. And those of you who don't know, I'll pop our website into the chat bar, and please go there and you'll see all the fabulous tools that have been brought together, courtesy of funding from the UK government. Bernadette, I hope I haven't taken up more than my small allotted time. Let me hand it back to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much. And I'd like to introduce our next speaker. And this topic is going to be of great interest because I think all companies want to know what is the criteria that's needed to comply with the tender requirements. I'd like to introduce Ms. Sarah Joy Newton from NHS. Sarah is a qualified nurse in adult and pediatric care with an additional 15 years of excelling in the medical device industry. She is known for her enthusiasm and energy, with a genuine desire to ensure that, as well as product and company success, patient outcomes are improved and customers' needs are met. Sarah's nursing and medical sales experience has given her a unique understanding and knowledge of the workings of the NHS and procurement, as well as a clinical understanding of products and technology. And she has established contacts and working relationships within the sector. As an experienced tender bid writer and internal ISO auditor, Sarah has developed a real insight into how to successfully complete tenders and provide solutions on how to comply with the ever-changing public procurement legislation, including the most recent requirements around. Thank you, Sarah, so much. And this is really going to be such an interesting topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernadette, and thank you for asking me to come and speak today. I'm just going to share my screen with you. I've got a slide deck for you to see. Okay, and just share my screen. Okay, so you should all be able to see my screen there now. Okay, so I'm just so I've been asked to speak about navigating the UK NHS procurement landscape and how to successfully win tenders here in the UK. So thank you for the introduction, Bernadette. So as she said, I'm a qualified nurse. So I've always been in the medical device industry. Currently, I now run Amethyst Connect, and Amethyst Connect as an organisation, we offer ISO internal auditing. We also offer tender bid writing, and that extends beyond the NHS because it also covers public procurement tenders and public procurement writing, because these this information is transferable and the requirements are the same for any public procurement contract, whether it's for medical devices in the NHS or for other products where it's government spend. And that's where my area of expertise lies now, in those public procurement requirements, what procedures are required and what your compliance requirements are. So today what we're going to look at, and this is a massive topic, so I'm just going to have to give the headlines, and we're going to give an overview of the basic working understanding of NHS procurement, what is required from suppliers to successfully complete a winning tender bid. So the learning points I want to cover is, what is the current NHS procurement landscape? What does that look like? How and where tenders are advertised. So if you want to engage with the UK, where do you go and find that information? And also then we're going to look at what the tender requirements are, and the four main pillars at the moment, once you've done your basic compliance, is social value, net zero, labour standards and modern slavery. And wherever you are in your process or progress to launching a product, it's good to have a handle on these things very early on, so that you then have them ready for when you want to bid for that all-important contract. So who's the buyer? So you've got a product, you've got things you want to engage with the UK. Who are you wanting to, you know, sell your products to? So the buyers here in the UK, you've got NHS hospitals and trusts, you've got NHS supply chain, Welsh Health Supplies, National Services Scotland, Northern Ireland, ICSs, that's integrated care systems. You've got your local authorities and councils, ambulance, police and fire departments, Ministry of Defence, the Crown Commercial Services and the Department of Health and Social Care. So that's all the public sector bodies that you would be looking at within medical devices, and also then private hospitals and clinics. We're going to focus today on the public sector. So just briefly, integrated care systems, they used to be called the clinical commissioning groups. They ceased to function in October 2021, and we've now got 42 integrated care systems. They're new partnerships between the organisations that meet health and care needs across an area. They coordinate services to plan in a way that improves population health and to reduce inequality between different groups. So if you've got products that are suitable for what we call the primary, am I unmuted again now? There we go. Yeah. So if you want to engage with the primary care system as opposed to the acute care system, with hospital products, if you want products that are used more in the community, your connection is going to be with integrated care systems. And this is new here in the UK. This only has been running for the last 12 months. So we need to talk about NHS supply chain, and the reason for that is they are the largest procurement opportunity for most suppliers, as they manage most of the NHS England spend. So the landscape of procurement for NHS supply chains changed significantly in 2019. We had the launch of the NHS supply chain new operating model, and the target was to increase the spend through NHS supply chain from 40% to 80%, and then the rest of the spend in NHS England would be being spent via other procurement hubs or directly through individual hospitals and trusts. So this was a massive shift here in the UK. Procurement of goods and services were divided up into 11 category towers as listed in the right-hand illustration, and supported by the service functions for logistics and information technology. Overall, overseen by the management function, Supply Chain Coordinated Limited. So what we're now looking at is we're looking at the implementation. We're evolving again because all these contracts are up for renewal. And an ITT was published in April 2022, inviting submissions to operators category management services. So we had the category towers, and those providers are now having to rebid for those contracts. The new evolving is for the target operated model, and the new NHS supply chain executive structure was released in July 2022. So they're going to change again the way that they're going to do it. But there's going to be 5 main categories: non-medical, medical consumables, medical capital, medical clinically complex, and PPE. So how do you find an opportunity? And this is probably one of the most important slides if you've never gone for opportunities here in the UK. So the 2 significant portals to sign up for are Contracts Finder and Find a Tender. So this is relatively new for the UK. This is post-Brexit, because before Brexit, we used to, all our opportunities were published through OJU. And that was part of the European Union. So now the UK has left. Following Brexit, we now have our own contracts services. So Contracts Finders and Find a Tender service. If you log on to both of those, you can then do a search. Once you've done a search and set your parameters, you can save that search, and then you can receive email notifications of contracts that may be of interest to you. With any of the topics that I'm covering today, if anyone wants more information about this in more detail, which unfortunately I haven't got time to go into today, please contact me and I can give you a bit more information on this. So we've also got other tender portals. So other organisations advertise their own tenders, but they will have to put their tenders through Contracts Finder and Find a Tender as well. And also they have their own portals for where you then submit the tender. So when you see a tender opportunity on Find a Tender or Contracts Finder, it'll then tell you where to go and find the actual tender, and then there will be a separate portal. I'll warn you now, some of these portals are easier than others to navigate, but that's something we can help you with. Those portals then is where you put your bid and submit your bid for that contract, for whatever it might be. So is it on a framework? So this is one of the most common questions we get, particularly in hospitals. When you're selling your product to hospitals, the buyer there will say, is it on a framework? The framework's an agreement for selected products and services from either sole ranked or multiple suppliers. And hospitals like to buy from a framework that's already established, because that means that it's already gone through the tender process. It means they are ticking the box for compliant purchasing. It's usually a 4-year agreement. Once the framework is awarded, you're unable to join, and there's no guarantee of sales once you're on the framework. However, this is a platform to then be visible to UK buyers. So if you get your product on an NHS supply chain or an NHS framework with other suppliers, you then have an opportunity to go and then speak to clinicians about your product. And it just takes away some of the hurdles to get that all-important order. So really briefly, I'm going to talk about some of the legislation here in the UK, because this is really relevant and there's been lots of changes. So the UK CA mark came into effect in January 2021. We're currently in a transition period. A new guidance was published only a couple of weeks ago in relation to how the various types of certification are going to be recognised here in the UK. We don't have time to cover this in detail because that is a massive topic all of its own. You can check on the UK government website or contact me and I can direct you to where that information is. But it's really important to know that the UK CA mark is transitioning in, and that may be relevant to your products. Also, all medical devices for sale in the UK must be registered with the MHRA, and you can search on their platform for products that are already listed as well. Also, if you are selling medical devices or IVDs in the UK and you're located outside of the UK, you must have a UK RP, and that is a UK responsible person. That person is then someone who is established in the UK. They act on behalf of the manufacturer, and you can only have one designated only one UK RP. That UK RP can be any third-party entity, importer, or a distributor, and then they will help you and put your make sure that you're registered with the MHRA and manage your connections within the UK and your contact with MHRA. So what are the tender requirements? So the baseline tender requirements, particularly if we're thinking about medical products, is you need your ISO certification, your CE or your CA mark, you need your financial setup in place, you need specific policies and procedures and compliance all in place. One of the other things that we've had in the UK is the adoption of PEPOL and GS1 standards, and this was established in 2014. It's a mandatory compliance to have barcoding and also to be able to transact through using PEPOL as your e-invoicing system. Again, we don't have time to talk about all of that today. That's a whole topic on its own, but happy to talk to anyone about that in the future at another time. So we have 4 public procurement assessments that suppliers are often being asked to complete by some contracting authorities. Successful awards can be dependent on them being completed satisfactorily. What I find is really useful, there's a couple of things that I like to do with clients. One is we look at tender discovery and we look at what tenders are already available to you and how to then set your timelines for when they're up for renewal and when to engage with those all important buyers, but also prepare that foundation of your policies and procedures and make sure that we look at these 4 assessments and can you answer them? So do you have these things in place to be able to move forward around carbon waste and water, social value, labour standards and modern slavery? So here in the UK, we have procurement policy notes, which we call PPNs. There was a big one in 0620, which was called Taking Account of Social Value in the Award of Central Government Contracts. And while I've talked quite a lot about medical devices, this is for all public procurement. So if you need to engage with me and with public procurement spend, taking account of social value now means that it is not just considered in a tender, it's actually got a 10% score, and that's a minimum score. So we're seeing in tenders, because I write tenders all the time for clients, and what we do is we look at what this score is, and it's gone from 10%, and in some it's as much as 40 or 50%. They're putting that sort of weighting on social value. So why has the government done this? So the government is going to capitalise on its buying power. It wants to maximise the value of contracts beyond pound for pound, and it also wants any suppliers to the UK to help its delivery for their government agendas. So in the UK, our government agendas at the moment, we've got some papers called Build Back Better, Levelling Up, tackling climate change, and also delivering the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And it's going to do this by asking suppliers to deliver social value via the public procurement process. It's determined to unite and level up our country. We've got places here in the UK that are deemed as being left behind. So at the heart of these new social value measures is supporting businesses and communities across the whole of the UK. They also want to increase the variety of companies delivering contracts, because this benefits local communities, but it also diversifies our risk and supports resilience. So what is social value? So social value is described as the effect of an organisation has on the well-being of individuals, communities and society as a whole. So it requires consideration of the impact the business has on its own employees how it trades and the wider community it serves and operates in. And it's being evaluated in different ways by different contracting authorities. So in preparation for participating in tenders, it's important to look at what your social values are within your organisation and how you can deliver those across the different evaluation models. So we've got a social value model, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, something called the TOMS, which is themes, outcomes and measures, and that's a specific measurement tool that's being used to assess social value in tenders. We've seen the social value procurement assessment, and sometimes a contracting authority may just write its own specific questions which are targeting the areas that they need support with. It's really important to understand what social value is and to prepare about writing for it in tender bids. Again, a whole webinar all on its own, which I'm happy to do another time. So the other PPN that we saw was in 0621, which was taking account of carbon reduction plans in the procurement of major government contracts. So in any contract that you are bidding for, any public procurement contract, you have to comply with this PPN. And that means that you have to report your scope 1, 2 and some of a subset of scope 3 greenhouse emissions. You have to commit to being net zero by 2050. And in the NHS, that target is actually 2045. You need to produce a carbon reduction plan. Your emissions and carbon reduction plan should be published on the company website or available on request. And then they want to see detail of environmental management measures that you have in place that can be applied during the performance of the contract within that carbon reduction plan. The NHS is really focusing on this as well. So the NHS has its own supplier roadmap where they have set out targets for all suppliers around their net zero target, which is 2045. They've also published what's called the Evergreen Sustainable Supplier Framework. This is currently being piloted at the moment. So we're getting constant feedback from NHS England and improvement. And I speak to them on a regular basis, seeing how this is evolving. This hasn't gone live yet. And once the pilot is completed by the end of this year, we will see it go live with NHS. So they've adopted the PPN 0620 around social value and actually used it to drive this target for fighting climate change, because that has to now be included in all tenders. If you need a supply solution for tracking your carbon, making those calculations and then creating a carbon reduction plan, you can either contact me for more information or go to www.trackmycarbon.co.uk. This is a supplier focused solution for PPN 0621. So I talked earlier about labour standards as well. Tender and procurement assessments are also asking suppliers how they manage their labour standards within their organisation, how you monitor it, what policies you have, grievance procedures, what your code of conduct is for suppliers and monitoring, your employee rights, benefits and or incentives. Also, modern slavery is another big driver for public procurement. There is a modern slavery assessment that people are asked to do, and also in the Modern Slavery Act 2015, organisations who have a turnover of 36 million or more are required to produce a modern slavery statement. However, we also are now seeing in tenders that even if you do not meet this threshold, you are still being asked to provide a statement. It's asking you to map your supply chain beyond tier 1, and in that mapping identify suppliers at risk geographically as defined by the Global Slavery Index for modern slavery. You need to have policies in place to demonstrate the organisation's commitment to the issue and processes in place to identify and resolve any issues. Just to be clear, it's not expected that you can guarantee that there is no modern slavery in the whole of your supply chain, but what it wants to see is evidence that you are trying to do what you need to do, and you have processes in place to look at it. Also, you have ethical purchasing practices and procedures. You can also do social audits, which then help you assess your organisation's compliance with social, economic and environmental legislation. So there's also a compliance requirement around training. There's a requirement for all staff to have training on labour standards and modern slavery. It has to cover the mandatory topics that are specified. It's to be delivered at induction for employees and then yearly. And then you provide confirmation on how that training is delivered and by whom, and evidence of that training content. And again, I always like to have a solution. So we've got a solution for that. So you can either contact me for more information on that. So we've got Tick the Box, which is a training and compliance solution for that. So we can send you some information on a demo if that's something that you need for your organisation. And so finally, in conclusion, participating in tenders and being successfully awarded is the best way to sell products and services to the NHS. And that also goes for selling to the public procurements, public sector within the UK. It's essential to implement procedures and processes to be able to demonstrate compliance with the procurement requirements and ensure your tender success. I'm aware we've covered a huge amount of information in a really short time, and I've only been able to give you top line information. If you need any more information on any of the topics today, then please let us know and we'll see how we can best support you. Because support and solutions are available to enable you to be successful in the UK market.
Thank you, Sarah, for a very informative session where you really outlined the several opportunities available in the medical sector in the UK. Thank you. It was really so informative. Thank you. And also all questions can be posted in the chat box and then we will revert to you. I'd like to now introduce you to our next speaker, Mr. Elias Sukareya from the United Nations Global Marketplace. Mr. Elias Sukareya is a procurement officer with the Vendor Registration and Outreach Unit of the Enabling and Outreach Service. Prior to joining the United Nations Enabling and Outreach Service, he has held several posts in the United Nations, including in the United Nations Procurement Division, Department of Safety and Security, the Office of Information and Communications Technology, and the Office of Human Resource Management. Mr. Sukareya holds a Master of Science degree in Industrial and Organizational Psychology, Human Resources Management, and a Bachelor of Science degree in Psychology from Brooklyn College in the United States. Thank you so much, Elias. I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, everyone. Let me share my screen one moment. Can anyone see my screen?
Yes, we
Hello?
can see
Yes,
it.
we can.
Yes, we can.
Wonderful, wonderful. It just starts. Great. I'd like to welcome everybody today to this, I guess, quick meeting and quick introduction to our the way United Nations does its tenders, the platform that we use, and of course, as my colleague earlier said, you will have many questions. You can send questions in the chat, and you can always contact me through the email address that I'll be sharing towards the end of the presentation. So what we'll be talking about today is the United Nations Global Marketplace. And this is the online global vendor portal that the United Nations Secretariat, along with 29 other UN entities or agencies, use as their procurement platform. For you as a supplier, registration is mandatory as a commercial vendor, and we'll talk about that more in a few minutes. In this platform, you can introduce your products and services to various UN organizations, as I mentioned, including the Secretariat, by completing a one-stop registration form at the basic level. In addition, you'll be able to use this platform to stay abreast and informed about upcoming tenders, current tenders, and so forth that you may be interested in vis-a-vis goods and services that you may feel that your company can supply as far as price, value, technical specs, and with the United Nations, most important is location, right? Because we source throughout the world. It's really important for you to have the ability to either be in remote locations or be able to send goods and services and service them and so forth in remote locations. Once you register, your profile as a vendor is automatically matched with any or all of the 30 entities that have a need for your goods and services. And again, once you're in, this allows you to become visible to approximately 5,000 of my colleagues, UN professional staff, and buyers at headquarters in New York and in the field. As I mentioned earlier, there are 30 entities, UN organizations, Secretary being one of them. Other big entities are UNICEF, UNDP, World Food Program, UNPD, ILO, and so forth. Important to note that as next few minutes I'll explain our registration process. They all have very similar registration processes, but different thresholds. So if you're registered with one entity, it does not mean that you're automatically registered at the second entity or third and fourth, because they have slightly different requirements. I'll get into some more detail about that in a few minutes as well. Just a brief snapshot, as we are one of the 30 entities that are in the UNGM. Our procurement spend for the last 5 years is approximately between 3.3 billion to 2.73 billion last in 2021. The top 5 commodity fields are, you have air transport, food catering, transportation security, vehicles, and financial instruments. Now, you ask, okay, I'm a vendor. How am I seen by the UN? What do I do? How am I? How can I become part of their supply chain? So the UN has done excellent work in classifying vendors based on the size of the requirement, and that translated into 3 registration thresholds per se. The first being basic level, and this allows you to apply for, submit tenders, and be awarded up to US $150,000. For this, it is automatic in nature. All you have to submit is the company name. We do not accept doing business as, or also known as entity registration. So meaning you have to submit the commercially registered legal name of your entity. We would need information about the company's senior officials, the company type, contact information, commodity code, which I'll speak about in a minute, and of course, your declaration of eligibility vis-a-vis the supplier code of conduct that the United Nations goes by. Again, this only allows you up to $150,000. So you say, okay, I want to be eligible for higher dollar amount awards. The next threshold that was designed was level 1. That allows you to submit bids and be awarded up to $500,000 US. In addition to the documents for basic level, here we need a little bit more information, some further company information, 3 references. At this stage, we're not asking for actual reference letters, only references of any clients they have serviced or provided goods recently. And more importantly, we require the certificate of incorporation or the equivalent, for instance, in South Africa, whatever the equivalent is. In essence, this is your company's legal paperwork that you are registered with the local, state, or country authorities, licensed, known to the country, and so forth. We use this for 2 specific pieces of information. Number 1, as I mentioned, at basic level, we want to confirm your legally registered commercial name. Number 2, the requirement is that you are in business for at least 3 years. So we check the date of incorporation of business establishment to confirm that you indeed meet the requirement of having been in business at least 3 years. The next and final registration level is level 2. And in addition to the document information for basic level 1, here we ask for 2 additional pieces of information. Number 1 being 3 reference letters. Here we actually need them to be on the referring entities or companies' company letterhead, signed by a duly authorized official, and it just has to state that they have done business with you, goods and services. No need for any details such as the monetary amount of the contract, nothing like that. And important to note, this has to be less than, well, actually up to 1 year old, cannot be more than 1 year in date. Before I continue here, important to note that previously we would request that all documents be in English. However, now we are accepting any documents in support for registration in the 6 UN official languages, that is to say English, French, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and Arabic. English, of course, makes our life a little bit easier, but we do have staff that speak the 5 languages. So if need be, if it's in a different language, one of the 6 official languages, aside from including English, then by all means, please submit. The next screen you're seeing here is, this is basically the entry point to UNGM. All you have to do is go to visit www.ungm.org. And as a new client or new stakeholder, you would click on Login New Registrations. You would identify your company as a supplier. And then the system is actually extremely user-friendly. So it will basically give you stop signs anytime in red, anytime you have missed something or something doesn't meet the requirements. So it will literally walk you through all the way to the finish line at the basic level, level 1 and level 2. You saw that I mentioned the commodity records earlier. So insofar as you enter the valid and reliable commodity codes into the UNGM, insofar would your registration be how can I say, effective and reliable, because that is the only way that the procurement officials can identify or classify your business as a potential supplier. The United Nations Standard Procurement Service Codes are used by the 30 UN entities that are registered in UNGM. It is our global classification system of products and services. And as I mentioned, it's used by the UNGM and by the procurement officials to classify you as a supplier, your products and services. This, of course, enables the staff to effectively identify you as a relevant supplier, hopefully, in specific categories of products and services. And then conversely, it also allows you, we'll speak about this in a minute on how to search tenders, but it also allows you to identify procurement opportunities that match your business capabilities or your core business. For more information about the codes, you could access them at the following resource. We will be actually sharing these presentations afterwards, so all these links will be active. You have registered at the basic level. You have received the welcome email and so forth, and now you're ready to start exploring our procurement ecosystem. So one way would be you would go to procurement opportunities, as you see in the screen above here. And here you can filter down. You could search by UN organization, us included. You could search by commodity codes. You could search by type of instrument, whether it's an RFP, RFQ, ITB, and so forth. And then the system will pull up any matches in the system. That is one way. The second way, as my colleague, I think the NIH mentioned earlier, they have a similar system. We have what's called a tender alert service. And this is an automated system that you as a vendor have the option to enroll in. It allows you to effectively get automated indications of any tenders that are in the system that match your profile. So of course, it saves you a lot of time and resources. You will never miss any deadlines for any requirements. It goes directly to your inbox or to any colleague in your company that you've registered his or her email in. It filters down to only relevant procurement opportunities vis-a-vis the commodity codes that you've registered in. As I just mentioned, one subscription, multiple receivers, and this allows you to get perhaps a heads up on the competition, or at least allows you to study the requirements in ample time to see, number one, whether it fits your profile as far as where you can provide, number two, whether it makes business sense, and number three, gives you enough time to put together a valid and accurate technical or financial proposal. One thing to note here, though, this is a paid service, and important to note that it's not for the United Nations Procurement Division or Secretariat. It is run by the folks that administer the UNGM, which is the UNOPS, United Nations Office of Project Services, and it is totally optional. So don't feel pressured to use it or not, but we do highly recommend it because it cuts all of the legwork. Everything just goes into inbox automatically. Similar related point, registration proper for the UNGM is completely free. Once you're in, you never have to pay any upfront subscription fees. Registration-wise, you never have to pay any fees to upkeep or anything of the sort. Another useful place on our site is contract awards, and here you can actually search previous contract awards so that you can learn more about how it's being done, which companies have been awarded, and so forth. Again, here you could filter by UN organization, the country or territory that the requirement is needed, and so forth. We have, as part of that we just visited, this is part of the United Nations UNGM Knowledge Center, and it has a big array of very important information. You'll see at the bottom, all the bottom, you have the procurement statistics. Here you could research the commodity, the top services goods that we procured, vendors that procured, procurement volume by countries, locations, and so forth. As you see here, you can also learn about the UN system organizations, the UN market, the 30 UN agencies, online courses, which we actually highly recommend. It is just a 20-minute video that gives you a lot of information, do's and don'ts, FAQs, and the basics of the procurement. It's, again, I just mentioned, it's only 20 minutes in duration, and extremely, we highly recommend it. What is going to happen is you will hopefully try to register the basic level either later this afternoon or next few days. We urge you to please register the basic level. As I mentioned, it's automatic. It takes a few minutes. The only time that there could be an issue is if the system flags something and then it gets checked by a colleague behind the scenes. Otherwise, 99% of the time it's automated. However, you may, and actually you will have either technical issues, at which point you can contact our colleagues at the UNGM, and their email is registry@ungm.org. And then you may have some qualitative questions, such as, for instance, we discussed earlier for level 2, financial statements, reference letters. Financial statements, it's important to note that we require the full audited financial statements. That is to say, it has to have the the audit opinion, statement of engagement, of course, the audit opinion of the auditing firm and auditor and CPA, income statement, balance sheet, notes to account. Many times, some vendors say, hey, we don't have audit financial statements. We do accept review statements, which do also include a statement of opinion. We accept those. Short of that, sometimes vendors say, hey, I only have in-house printouts. Those are not, they're not accepted. So it has to be, in a nutshell, it has to be verified by outside objective third party, which would be an audit or CPA firm. As I mentioned earlier, there is no fee to register or upkeep registration. However, the onus is on you as the vendor or supplier to notify us, the United Nations, in writing immediately of any material changes, such as, let's say, any takeover of the company, any legal name changes, anything of the sort. And of course, you have to upkeep the financial statements. So at the end of each financial year, you have to keep abreast all of the documents in your profiles. You have to keep uploading every year the recent financial statement. You may still have some issues registration-wise. You can then please contact us. We try to get back to you either with a solution within 24 hours, or we respond to you within 24 hours saying that, hey, we're working on it, somebody will revert. And that email address is register@un.org. They're very similar, just make sure that you don't crisscross the two. So for technical issues, it's registry@ungm.org. For registration-related issues in the UNGM, as in, I don't know what to do, does this document suffice? Am I fulfilling the requirement, and so forth? It is register@un.org. What else? What else to say? Two important things. Once you register, pay close attention and put a lot of time and effort into ensuring that you have used the most valid commodity codes that accurately reflect your core business or goods and services that you provide. And please take that few minutes today or next few days to register at the basic level. It's important to note that once you register at the basic level, the system, the UNGM, automatically submits your application at the basic level to any and up to all of the 30 entities, including us, that use the commodity codes that's part of their supply chain portfolio. And you are free to pursue the registration there, or you are free to uncheck or withdraw your registration to any of the additional entities that the system registered you for. It only does that at the basic level. For you to register the basic at level 1 and level 2, that you have to do yourself. You have to pursue yourself. System does it for you. And as I mentioned earlier, all the 30 entities, including us, more or less follow similar registration procedures as set forth by the UNGM Procurement Task Force, but there are some variation, especially on thresholds and required documents. So if you've registered for one, it doesn't really give you any advantage or credit towards the registration at level 1, level 2 with any of the other entities. They all have their own registration shops like we do in the Secretariat. And finally, as I mentioned, this presentation will be shared afterwards. We do appreciate if you could just take maybe, I think it's a 4 or 5 minute survey as to, of course, how you like the presentation and what you liked, what you didn't like. And we use this for our KPIs. And of course, we use this to try to always improve our presentation, see what worked, what didn't, what we have to concentrate on more in future events such as this. That's basically it. If you have any questions in the Q&A now, I'll try to answer as many as I can within the allotted time. But of course, if you do have any further questions, you could always email me at register@un.org. it's a shared box, but it comes to me as well. So I will personally try to respond to you within 24 hours. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Elias, for another outstanding and informative workshop. Thank you so much. And I'd just like to encourage all participants just to all your questions, just to post it in the chat box, and we'll definitely revert to you as well. So companies can see there's so many different opportunities in the medical sector and very diverse. So compliance requirements are met, and we'd like to encourage participants to really access those opportunities. We'd like to invite the next speaker from the EU, Mr. James Bailey. After the economics-based first degree, James advanced to postgraduate studies in export marketing and German language, where he was awarded the Napier University Edinburgh Medal of Excellence. He was appointed export manager in a UK Scottish defence and aerospace electronics company and was based in Dundee, then in Germany. He was promoted to European, then global export manager, a position that took him as far as the Republic of Korea. At the start of 2006, he joined the South African High Commission, London, as Trade Section FDI Investment Manager, working to attract FDI into South Africa across multiple sectors. As a Scot, he gravitated towards oil and gas and renewable energies. He attended the prestigious Aberdeen University Energy Week residential course in 2014. From 2015 to 2017, he completed an MA Theology distinction, and after exploring ordination, he now serves as a voluntary RAF Association welfare officer and advises his local branch on marketing. He continues to engage in ad hoc FDI consulting and most recently advised a potential candidate for the ambassadorship of the Zambian embassy, Berlin, and engaged in discussions with the city of Leipzig on a UK market entry strategy. Thank you so much, James. I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you. I'll just call up my screen, if I may. There we are. Good morning, bonjour, guten Morgen. In this session, we'll be looking at identifying and responding to calls for tender in the EU portal. My screen seems to have frozen. If you give me a minute, I may have to stop my video as I have bandwidth issues. I'm sorry, the presentation have you got it working, I think.
Yeah, it's moving now, James.
Yeah, I just have to take it back to the beginning.
Yeah, and hopefully he'll bring you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, the EU tenders system. What are calls for tender? They're basically publishing an invitation to tender calls as a competitive process as the EU Commission seeks to elicit submissions for its stated requirements for the purchase of goods, services, or works. Now, the essentials are basically self-explanatory. Delivery of goods, services, or works in compliance with predefined requirements, execution according to contractual conditions, payment upon fulfillment of conditions, and price. So the EU process to participate is a 5-step process. Initially, you search for an opportunity that is a published open or forthcoming call to tender. Secondly is to identify a partner or partners. This is optional, but as I'll explain later, it is an option you should exercise. Thirdly, you create an account, and the person who creates that account is the initial point of contact. Fourthly, you register your organization. Now, the company profile as part of your registration will be utilized by the database and by those searching for potential partners. So the profile has to be concise, it has to be informative. And I would advise you to pay attention to the key word descriptors you use in your organizational profile. And I would suggest that you take a look around first and get an idea how other people have done that. Now, after that, you would be looking to submit your proposal, and I recommend you implement an internal milestone mechanism and a final pre-submission review before you do submit, because any errors will lead to automatic rejection of your submission. The start page you will meet when you go to the web link that's cited above. This takes you into the funding and tenders opportunities portal itself. What we're interested in specifically at this point is the menu bar top left, search funding and tenders. When you use that, it generates the search box you can see below. Below the search box, you'll see all the EU programs that their tenders are placed on the portal. So you can see there's quite a wide selection there. So you would put in your chosen keyword search, and this will generate an initial general list. So for example, we have here 591 tenders. You should look at the left-hand side and note that we searched only on tenders, not search on grants. So the grants box has not been ticked. Similarly, if you look below at the submission status for calls, we have searched on forthcoming calls, that is future calls, and we've also searched on open calls that are inviting current submissions. In this instance, we have not looked at closed calls, calls which are completed, or calls that have been terminated or withdrawn for whatever reason. Now, if you look at the tender title here, you'll see in bold technical assistance for improving day and home care. If you were to click on the tender title, this will take you automatically through to the e-tendering submission. I would also point out to you here the procedure type. Now, while most procedures are open, from time to time they're restricted. Now, the criteria for restriction could be, for example, restricted to EU states only. It could be restricted to companies that have a specific technical capability the EU Commission is looking for, things like that. And finally, on this slide, the window of opportunity, the open window for responding to a call, the publication date to the deadline date. This varies, and it can even be as short as 4 weeks. So having generated a general list, you now want to drill down using various criteria to make a more specific and relevant list. So in this example, we have typed in the word clothing. We're looking again just at tenders, and in submission status, we've put in all tenders, including closed. Now, in this tender, you'll see that we've only generated, unfortunately, closed tenders, tenders that are now completed. So I think this highlights the reason why you should always tick the exclusion box for closed tenders. Searching by place of delivery, and I suspect this is going to be the most relevant way of searching for people who are in the SACU area. So if you look at the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see place of delivery or performance tenders only. Now we've elected to put in Kenya as a search country. It's in brackets, it has returned 9 responses, and on the screen we actually see the 2 responses that are closed. So again, that highlights why you should exclude closed. You'll also note that by searching in Kenya, we've also brought up Somalia and East Africa as part of the search results. Now, partner search. Here we put in another search for clothing. It's generated a response that has brought up a company in Finland. They have been awarded a contract, so they've got a project. It does indicate that they are not specifically looking for a partner on this at present. Now, I would not be deterred by this at all. The reason for this is that when you see a call, it'll give the point of contact details for companies that you can approach. So don't be deterred by the fact that they haven't officially asked for a partner. What I would recommend is you keep a note of such companies and you approach them unofficially out with the EU process and sound them out. Say you represent a company in South Africa or Mozambique, you have a certain capability, you'd like to explore with them the potential of working with them. So you create visibility, you make known your capabilities, and they might just then actually look at bringing you on board. It's maybe an option they haven't personally explored. Now, you can identify potential partners across all calls, including closed calls. So what I'm recommending is that you keep market intelligence generated by this portal. So it's not merely looking and searching for tender opportunities, it is a market intelligence resource in its own right. And you should extract and keep on your own system those companies, those points of contact that you regard as relevant, whether official or unofficial. So you not only identify, for example, your potential partners, you can identify competitors, you can maybe look at award notices to see if there's a certain pattern emerges in your particular area of interest. The repeat tenders, do they go to people who have partners from particular countries? Is it companies from particular EU states that tend to win contracts in the area you're interested in? So you build up a picture of where to look and how to present your submission when the time comes. Now, we've been looking only using the search function, but to gain access to full portal functionality, you of course have to register. So this is what you would be presented with. If completed correctly, it will generate an email which will send a link to your account. You would then use that link to set up a password, and that gives you access to the full portal. Now, I would emphasize at this stage, the email you put in cannot be changed. So it has to be accurate. So if you get that wrong, you're going to have to start all over again. Let's assume you have done it correctly. You'll press submit, and what will appear on your screen is successful login. So now you're actually in the full portal in a live active session. So what we're looking at now is the Manage My Area. So what you're looking to do here is you're looking to complete personal details, organizational details, and also set up the formal notifications of forthcoming and current tenders that you wish to receive. Now, in the personal profile, for example, you may have members of staff, employees who have specific skills that are relevant to the tendering system. So, for example, people with linguistic abilities. So you'd want to add those people in also as points of contact in addition to yourself. Your organization, again, you would maybe perhaps want to change your profile. You maybe want to update it as your business evolves. So you gain new certifications, you gain new products, new capabilities. So again, that would be entered in this area. And finally, the formal notifications which you receive. Now, these will be generated by the formal search structure that you have used. So that reflects your search structure, your filtered results, etc. And you will get email alerts for calls to tender. And again, when your business evolves, you can change that as well. And you can also change parameters like the frequency with which you receive the notifications. Could be weekly, could be bi-weekly, monthly, whatever is appropriate for you. Now, this is of particular importance. When you've registered as an official participant, your company will be sent an official so-called PIC code. This is a participant identification code. This is key, absolutely key to all your correspondence with the Commission. So I would suggest that you keep this code in several different secure file locations on your system. If you lose that, you're going to have to go through the system again to generate a new PIC code. So if we look now at keys to success. So I would suggest that 1, you register as soon as possible, and 2, you familiarize yourself thoroughly with the support area on the menu bar, because there you gain access to the full capabilities of the portal and the database. There you'll find step-by-step online guides through the portal process, from proposal preparation to submission. And if you're successful and are awarded a tender, that is where your reporting function of your ongoing project would also be, the details of that would be found. So this is valid for all programs out until 2027. Now, you really do have to delve into the FAQs, the help functions, and particularly the instructive videos, because the processes and procedures can at first appear intimidating, but I assure you, with mastery of those, you're well on your way. And you really cannot wing it. You can't just ad hoc go into your first live tender submissions. You just won't succeed with that. If we look at what I've already mentioned, create market intelligence lists of companies and contacts on the database, and also extract details so that you can approach directly from out with the EU system if it is prudent to do so. I would also recommend as a new entrant, that you focus initially on forthcoming calls and also calls that are open but have a longer lead time, because that will offer you more leeway in your preparation of your submission. As I said, identifying a partner is very crucial as well. Although it's considered optional, I would consider it crucial. So identify an EU resident company as a partner, preferably one that already has or has already achieved tender awards. Breaking into this system, of course, can be protracted, so perseverance is required. And if you submit and do not gain a tender with your first submission, learn the lessons, modify your approach accordingly. So for example, for your next submission, look to other partners, for example, other countries. So what you're really looking to do is you're looking to manage the factors you have control over in making a submission. Because once you're registered as an existing qualified supplier, you're more likely to win an award of a tender, and repeat business is then the name of the game, because success breeds success. So in conclusion, I would say that you really have to look beyond the tendering function of the portal. You have to look at all the different aspects. You have to think outside the box, use it as a market intelligence resource. So in conclusion, I would say this is a brief overview, and I'm aware it's maybe a painfully brief overview. My understanding is the presentation normally takes 2 hours, and I understand that this more comprehensive version may be on offer at your next Meet the Buyer session in September. So I wish you good luck in your tender hunting. Thank you.
Thank you, James, for a very powerful, insightful work presentation as well. And we'd just like to thank all our speakers for the valuable, informative information you've given to all participants. And we know that the participants can take this, apply this information to their businesses and really make it more sustainable. So we'd like to say a big thank you to all our speakers today. And now we'd just like to hand over to Rob Canava, the JCCI Trade Advisor. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernadette. I know we're over time and I always get to say the last comments, but I'm going to be very brief. I just want to say a huge thank you to Sarah, Elias, and James. The information that you shared has been, I can assure you, well received. You're familiar with the area, so we do need a lot of help, and I can tell you it's been most appreciated. I've got to say a special thank you to Elias. Elias, thank you. I know it's 5 a.m. in New York, so thank you again for making the time to be there. Thank you as well to Bernadette and Boosie from the JCCI. I know we've got a great working relationship, and it's been fantastic working on these trade power days and these Meet the Buyer series. And then obviously to Rob and some and the TFSA colleagues. This is a fantastic program that we've got going, and it's great to be involved. You know, the information that we've got and we're putting together is so relevant and so informative and useful. And I think to the listeners, I just want to say one thing. You know, we've tried to keep these trade power days, these Meet the Buyer series, as informative as possible and as relevant. And you'll note that this information that you got today is normally covered over 6-7 hours. I mean, most of these sessions, the session that Elias did, the session that Sarah did, the session that James did, they're like 2 hours, 3 hours if you normally do it. So we've tried to compact it into an hour. I know we've run over slightly over time, but the information that you've got there has been truly invaluable. And I think we've all got a duty and a responsibility to share this information with companies that we know would be successful in going after these opportunities. I'm glad to see that Amanda, I saw in the chat, she just registered. So Elias, I think you're going to see a lot more registrations from the region. I'm hoping so. And I just want to say thank you again, you know, to Sarah, Elias, and James. I mean, you all offered to sort of keep in touch, so we will definitely do that. And we won't be exploiting you, but we will definitely count on you to help us and to help the companies in the region. So that's it from me. So thank you again for everybody that signed in, and please, you know, as you're only going to, the best way to explore these platforms is to go through them, and just as James said and Elias said and Sarah said, just go through them and try and see where you fit in and play around with it. And you know, there's a whole marketplace out there. So thanks, and thanks everyone again. Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Bernadette.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Stay safe.
Definitely. Thanks again.
And thanks to everybody for participation. Elias, indeed, James, lovely as well. Much appreciated. If we get demand, we'll come back to you to maybe do a longer one further down the line.
Fantastic.
Lovely. Thanks. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.